So, while we were playing the game, we didn't really have time to sit down and really look at why this game is good or bad. We were kind of hoping that the videos would talk for themselves, but I really think that it'd be better if we went through and just kind of talked about how we feel about the game and our opinions on it, and really like what went wrong. Because it definitely feels like there's something wrong with the game, but it's really hard to do that unless we really sit down and kind of examine it.
Well,
So,
especially since we were so frustrated and burned out, like we were going to sit there and concentrate on describing.
Yeah, it's hard to look at the big picture when you're sitting there playing it for hours and hours.
Yeah.
Especially the blue coins. But, so, let's just start with saying, like, okay, is this game good or bad? What do you think?
Besides the fact that it's my childhood, after playing it again, though, being a little bit at least more experienced with other types of games out there, I'm not a very good gamer, but I've at least experienced a lot more. I feel overall it's a very weak game, though there are really strong elements, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more. But I'd say overall it's probably pretty weak, or not pretty weak, but on the weaker side of the spectrum. I just feel like the things that make it bad are really offset the good stuff. And
I agree. Like, I think it's a good game, but like it's easy to overlook the positive things because there's so many flaws.
Yeah, and the
really,
flaws are the magnitude of the flaw is not the same as the magnitude of the good stuff. It feels like in the end.
Yeah, it's because like, well, we'll get into it, but I think that really it feels really rushed to me.
Yeah, it definitely.
Like there are a lot of things where it's like this could have used like a couple more months for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a really big part of what I feel feels rushed is Flood in particular. I think that it was really a missed opportunity for that game to be unique, especially in the Mario series. Like, there's nothing like that.
Yeah.
But yet, like, they completely missed out on using it uniquely and creatively. And I think that's really what hurt it in the end.
Yeah.
And also, like, there are just, like, no levels compared to all the other Mario games. I think it really needed some more.
Yeah, there's definitely way too few levels. I mean, I didn't really play through all of 64, or really any of the other ones, but I guess it's more comparable to 64. And
right.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the LP of it, the Vicus LP, and so I at least saw what the scope of the level or the game is, and yeah, that thing had way more levels. At least it felt it did. Even if it only had a few more, it felt like it had a lot more because I think the variety of the levels. Anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, we'll get to the level things a little bit later. But what I want to jump into right away is, you know, Super Mario Sunshine is a platformer, and for platformers, I think controls are really the most important thing. Like, your controls are gonna end up defining how the game is gonna be.
Yeah.
If you have shit controls, it doesn't matter how good your game looks, how well the levels are designed. If it controls like shit, I mean, that right there is gonna kill it.
Because I mean, the game is centered around your ability to control the character, so
right. So it starts there.
Yeah.
So I think that the game actually controls pretty well. I think they did a good job with how Mario controls and how he moves around.
Yeah, it feels pretty tight.
It feels a lot like Super Mario 64 did. You can tell that they spent a lot of time refining it and making sure that it really wasn't that buggy, making sure Mario had weight.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it felt very deliberate. All the actions that you did felt really deliberate.
And they were very easy to control. And that's good. That's a good start. And I think Flood actually adds to that because his hovering power is actually pretty good in extending what Mario can do.
Yeah.
It's extending his abilities.
Yeah, very good addition to the possibilities of movement and stuff. And I also... oh, fuck, never mind. I forgot.
But yeah, like, I think that was good that they did that. It's obvious that they sat down and they're like, okay, before we do anything, let's just make sure this works. Because if this doesn't work, then we can't really go anywhere with that.
Yeah,
So
they started
by
off with a
making
good
sure-
foundation.
Yeah, and I think that this is why I think that Flood was a missed opportunity, because it controls so well when you're just moving around, hovering, or shooting it. It doesn't feel like, wow, this is like janky or whatever.
Mhm.
It actually feels like, okay, yeah, this works. But so that part is pretty good. Except the only thing that doesn't control well are things like the ropes. Jumping on the ropes was pretty bad.
Yeah, that was
Uh,
a
The boat
very
physics were just terrible. So those things, like when you interact with objects, it definitely need to work. But those are kind of like gameplay elements that you could tell they added in.
odd. Yeah, the
it
ropes
wasn't really
seemed
part-
a bit rushed and kind of
Yeah.
forced. Maybe not forced, but last minute type idea.
Yeah, it definitely needed to work.
Because I mean, it like there was a whole level where all you did was jump on ropes. Like that's pretty.
Right.
That's kind of.
It needed a lot more refining, really.
Yeah.
And like, it's unfortunate because I think the ropes would have been pretty awesome,
Mhm.
but it's just how floaty they are, and it's really hard to go to the side and kind of jump to the side, and then to do the little thing where you spray the flood and spin around. It's cool, but it's really hard to pull off.
Yeah, and it's almost never useful.
Yeah,
I mean, even when we were playing, I think there might have been only one time where it actually benefited
Right,
something we were
yeah.
doing. But most times, not that you can't have some sort of like mechanic that doesn't necessarily have to be useful at every moment or anything. It could be something fun, or you could use it as like a combo in combination with something else, or in conjunction with something else. But it felt really just, since it was so awkward, you're never really tempted to use it, and so it was kind
Yeah,
of
you're
just
like-
wasted.
yeah. It's like, why bother doing that when I could just triple jump and
Yeah,
flood
I could
over
just
that? And
you
that's
could triple jump.
that's
and
what we
get
went
way
to.
higher, and with the hover way farther in the end.
And that sucks because all of these other times they try to get you to do something that's pretty cool, like spin on the rope or do something like that. You don't even bother because it's just much easier to
Yeah,
jump over there and
There's
flood
like
it, so.
there's one niche for everything, or not everything, but in certain things, and it ends up being, well, why the hell would I do anything else if this route is the easiest and quickest route, or
Yeah.
most useful, or something? It kind of just they provide no fuck the word. Basically, no reward or anything for using something a certain
Yeah.
way. You have no.
It's like, it's
that word.
frustrating. Why would I even try that?
Yeah.
So, talk about controls, and I think Flood is a big part of the controls, and it's a unique part of Mario Sunshine, so we can't really talk about the game without talking about Flood in particular.
Yeah.
And an interesting thing about Flood is that there were a lot of different iterations of him, and the one we know today is, of course, the one they picked. But I think that they could have really gone with something else, because Flood as a character is pretty fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think they
Like-
could have dropped that completely.
yeah, I don't think it was needed
There's
at
no
all.
reason to have it be a sentient device. It could have just been something he picked up, regardless of.
Yeah, it didn't need to talk.
Yeah. I'm
could
pretty
have been
sure it's a
like-
no-brainer to most people.
The only reason it talked was like to explain how it works, but that could have been done in any other way.
Yeah.
There's no reason for that.
You could. I mean, there could have been some guy that told you, or just a
Toadsworth.
prompt. I mean, you don't necessarily
Yeah.
need something to tell you, I guess,
Yeah.
unless if that's like Mario canon, or people in the world describe the world to you, or the mechanics of certain things to you.
I don't know. I think that's really the first time they had like a vocal tutorial for you. Like Mario 64 was just the signs that you read,
Well, what
and I
about the
think
canon?
Mario Galaxy,
I thought the canon. Oh no, the pink bob-ombs.
it was still text,
Yeah.
and then Super Mario Galaxy was all text as well. So
Oh, I thought you meant vocal as in the character speaking, not vocal literally, like audio.
Yeah, like
okay.
voice.
In that
Yeah.
case, yeah.
I mean, it's like nitpicking at this point to talk about like, yeah, the Flood has terrible voice, but I think it really was kind of lame.
I output over 1,000 damage.
Another thing about Flood is that I think it was really interesting as a concept, but I think it was not utilized enough in the real gameplay and in the world. Like, they made you like clean all the goop at the beginning, and then that whole gimmick never really became something that you used in the levels. I think there was one level, that Nico one, where you had to clean the animals off the side of the wall and it would make more platforms appear. And that's really the only time that you used that, and I really would have liked to see more of that. Which is unfortunate.
Nico Bay.
Yeah, that one. And that's really the only time you see that game mechanic used. And I think it would have made Mario Sunshine a really unique game if they just took the opportunity and used it more often.
I'm sorry, what? I guess I got confused. What specific mechanic?
Cleaning like goop off of walls and stuff, and then actually getting a reward from it or something.
Yeah, because otherwise it was just kind of... oh, well, there was also that level in the sky where you have, like, the undercarriage. There's... oh, no, wait. No, you just have to dodge all the liquid. You don't have to clean it.
There was one, I think,
hotel.
outside the hotel. Yeah. But that one was probably alright, but it really didn't reward you. It was just like, clean all the goop and I'll give you a shine sprite. Which wasn't very creative at all. But,
yeah. And I'll
better
give
than
you
nothing,
a shine sprite, even though our island needs them for its survival. I will wait.
And then I'll give it to you.
I didn't like that concept at all of anyone holding a shine sprite.
And it was usually like the pianas or whatever they're called. They're the ones that have them, and yet they need them.
Yeah,
that is really weird.
Sense.
But whatever. And then just to kind of like finish off the whole FLUDD topic, I think that even though it was a missed opportunity and his character was pretty annoying, I still think that he controlled pretty well. And I think the extra nozzles were actually pretty cool. They should have done more of that.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when you first brought up the FLUDD. It feels like the extra nozzles weren't utilized nearly as much. In the sense that they had obvious, basically, situations that those nozzles were necessary. So you would have a shine sprite that was 100 feet above ground. Okay, well now I need the rocket nozzle. You have to break a door by going fast. Well, now I need the speed nozzle. Or you're doing some sort of race or something. I thought there was one other one where you actually needed the speed nozzle for the one where you get the red coins at the airport.
The secret shine.
Yeah, it's like things like that where they force the situations onto them so that they don't feel like wasted mechanics or wasted tools in the world. So they force you into these positions, which isn't necessarily bad. It's just those were the only times they were actually useful. The way the game was set up, at least, because the hover is always useful in almost every situation. It's useful, except the ones that are specific for the other nozzles. But I mean, if they made them, so that's basically.
There are very few times, I think I can count the times on one hand that a nozzle would not necessarily be needed for an area, but it would create an alternate route. That just didn't happen very often at all.
Yeah, it wasn't. And I think a lot of it's up to you. Choose how you want to go. It's kind of like no, there's one way, and you got to use the nozzle that corresponds with that way.
Yeah, I think a lot of it just really comes down to how they designed their levels. I don't think they really thought about the idea of, hey, what happens if the player has the nozzle here? How would that affect how they get the shine here? It wasn't. I don't think it was brought up enough.
Yeah,
and that's unfortunate. That really is. I know I use the word unfortunate a lot, but that's how I really feel about this game.
It's what it comes down to, because it had a lot of potential. So
exactly,
it's just an unfortunate situation.
So yeah, I think that covers it for FLUDD. I can't really go past that. I think that
one comment I wanted to make about the controls for FLUDD is that one thing I kind of had an issue with. It wasn't so much the control for FLUDD, but it was the way the camera acted when you were doing certain platforming things with the FLUDD, and I guess just in general, not necessarily with the FLUDD, but I feel like it was the most noticeable with the hover. There were times where the camera felt a bit awkward, and I could see why they did what they did. It just, I felt like it didn't take into consideration how extremely inconvenient it ends up being. For instance, just as an example really quick, when you wall jump off something and you try to hover, the camera turns away from the wall, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have to pull back, like you have to pull back and wait for the camera to turn, or turn Mario. I forget exactly. It's not in my hand, so I forget exactly how it works. But all I know is that the camera is working against you that whole time, and to get back to the wall, even though you wall jumped, is really hard, and unnecessarily though. Not just hard, like, oh, it's a difficulty curve. It's just unnecessary because it happens
all the time.
Yeah, and it happens
every
all the time,
time
and it gets really frustrating because you miss your mark because the camera takes forever to turn. And I just feel that's... I don't know if you would really count the camera as part of controls or what, but it didn't... There were times where it didn't work at all. It was only just working against you, if anything.
Yeah, I would definitely say that cameras are part of the control because Mario's movement is based on where the camera is facing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. So if that isn't working, yeah. Anyway, covered Flood pretty well, I think. I want to move on to the game's aesthetics because a lot of people talk about, oh, it doesn't matter how a game looks. And I'm not talking about graphically wise, I'm talking about art direction. Yeah. And I think that is actually important because, for one, it helps a game just feel unified if it has like a clear direction in terms of style and theme. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that this game did right in terms of like trying to portray it as a tropical type place.
Yeah, every level.
It definitely did it. Like, there's no way you could say this game is not tropical themed.
Even like the lava level, I mean,
it
like a volcano on a big island. It fit. You know, it didn't within the world. It wasn't like a forced lava level or whatever.
Yeah, it works.
But yeah, the synergy of all the levels did mesh together pretty well.
And we all know that Nintendo is like a great team of artists. Obviously, they can probably afford the best of the best, and there weren't many times where I found something where I was like, this looks kind of weird. I think they did a good job on making sure the assets looked good, and you know, things like the water looked really, really good. You could tell they spent a lot of time on that.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things that impressed me visually with it. But there were some things that I think could still use some work. I think the levels needed more variety. Like, the tropical theme's okay, but it's like every single level is almost like the exact same thing. It's just taking part in like a beach or, you know, the oil rig area, but I think it needed more variety than that to really like separate the levels.
Insert random tropical stereotypical item. Stereotypically tropical item. Beach, palm tree, water. I mean, it's not even like, oh, okay, well, yeah, of course there's going to be a beach, of course there's going to be water. Especially water, since the whole game is kind of, you know, built around water, manipulation. But, I don't know, it gets to the point where it's like, okay, now it's just all the same. There's no variety.
Yeah, they all feel the same.
Or there's not that there's no variety, it's just very sparse, and it's not varied enough.
Like, at one point, like, I was dying for even a sewer level, like, just something.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't mind something coming out of, you know, out of nowhere. That's why I like the volcano level. It's short, and it's kind of dumb, but because it's so different, it just stands out that much more.
Yeah.
It's and that sucks because, like, if you just took something, like, you took the oil rig level and it was covered in snow, like, that would be enough to transform it to something else.
Or if you could travel to, like, if they felt like they needed to explain why that was the case, they could just make a level at the top of the volcano or something, or
make it like Bowser's a dick and he puts snow all over it.
Oh, that's true too. Yeah, he's fucking Bowser. He can do whatever the hell he wants. They can explain
it doesn't need to make sense.
Yeah, exactly. But I've already suspended my disbelief that there's these Piantas and there's a device that shoots water downward that makes you go upward.
Yeah, like, obviously, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Just make it interesting. Also, I think the enemies were kind of bland. I don't know if you felt that way, but I felt like some of them, like the little duck things and...
Oh, I can't hear you. You disappeared.
Oh, I meant like the little duck things and like the little things that pop out of the ground. I thought they were just kind of not very memorable.
Yeah. Well, it felt... I wouldn't say that they were like... they were just all really easy, too. I mean, since there's no difficulty setting for the game, you know, I guess games like that would have to kind of rely on the increasingly difficulty of the enemies in later levels or something, or the layouts. But it felt like all the enemies you ever came across were just extremely easy. So
all of them were like, just jump on me and I'm dead.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
they were non-issues. All they were just a little like hurdle you had to jump over, but a very, very small hurdle.
Right.
And almost literally just jump over. And yeah, so I agree that the enemies were very bland in the fact, I'd say mainly in just the aspect of difficulty, because then at that point it wasn't about killing enemies at all. It was literally about just jumping in the right place, except the blooper fights. Those are the only times where, I mean... Okay, well, let's talk about bosses real quick, because actually that's actually pretty big. Segue.
Yeah. So the bosses in this game were pretty shitty.
Oh, God, they were awful.
You know, Mario 64 didn't really have that many bosses, but even then, theirs were probably better than this one. Probably the best boss fight in this game, and one thing that kind of showed off the potential that this game could have had, was the very first PD Piranha fight, where you fought him by shooting water in his mouth to, like, make it so he falls over and hits him.
Yeah.
It was unique. It showed that the water could be used multiple ways.
Mm-hmm. Not just cleaning and stuff.
Yeah. It was really interesting. And then what happened? We get Blooper, and we get him like 3 times in a row.
And then you get PD Piranha again.
Yeah, and that's
slightly different. He flies.
He flies
now,
around.
But all you gotta do is hit him with 1 drop of water, and he goes down.
And even the last fight, Bowser, was so lame. It was just jumping with the rocket and hitting 5 things, and that's it.
Yeah.
No other forms, like...
You don't even attack him, like, at all.
Directly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, Super Mario 64, you actually have to hit him multiple times. You swing him around, you feel like you're actually, like, kicking his ass.
Yeah.
And in this game, so lame.
Yeah.
Like, what is that?
One complaint I really have about the blooper fights, which is obvious to most people, besides the fact that there's 3 of the same exact boss, which is basically the end of that stage of that level, is that they did nothing to change it. They did nothing to make it any different. It's not even like they recycled at least, like, the idea of the boss, but then kind of use different mechanics or different like techniques to have to kill him or something completely different. No, it's literally the same fight 3 different times for a level. It's almost like you play the exact same level 3 different times, which when also considering the level design, pretty much or at least the art direction of each level, I should say, not the level design, the art direction.
Another segue, because next topic is actually level design, which is probably the
2 for 2.
Largest topic that we're probably going to cover in this game, because I think level design is actually a big thing that's a problem that kind of covers up all the good stuff that this game has to offer. Is destroyed by the terrible level design. And it really starts at how many levels this game has compared to Super Mario 64. This game has 10, including the volcano, the Corona Mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And then Super Mario 64 is 18, including all the Bowser ones.
It did have quite a bit more.
Almost twice as much.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts.
And I know some people are going to say, oh, quantity is not better than quality. But it's not that. It's the fact that you only have these amount of levels, and that means they're just trying to shove all they can into them, and it wasn't enough. It needed more variety.
Yeah.
And the first level, I think, right off the bat, doesn't really impress you. It's not intuitive. It doesn't feel like a level that's going to train you very well. It's just kind of like you jump in and you don't know where to go.
Yeah, and like, even though you technically were shown the flood, by the controls for the flood by the flood, you don't ever have any sort of description of many other things after that. So you get there, right? that first level, and there's the ropes and stuff. You don't know what the... I mean, I guess you could just jump on the rope and then figure out that it bounces you, but like you said, it just felt less intuitive than I guess other games that probably hold your hand. Maybe not hold your hand, that sounds kind of bad. That's implying that they think you're stupid, but I don't know. I could see why you'd consider it unintuitive. Also, there's like two separate parts. There's a big wall in the middle.
Yeah, the
but
big
you're supposed
wall,
to be on
I
the other
think,
side
is
of the
stupid.
wall.
It's like, let's just put a giant wall for no reason.
Yeah.
Like, it makes no sense.
And it's not like there's a time where that wall is like utilized to keep you from one side, or you have to do something to open it. No, you can cross it at any time, but it's just a hindrance when, I don't know, I guess...
I mean, the level just makes no sense to me. It just seems like a bunch of different shit just mashed together. Like, they had no idea really what they wanted to do with it. I kind of like the tower thing at the end, that's kind of interesting, but I think you could have chopped the left side of that level off and I would have just been fine with that.
Yeah, I think the side with the towers is at least more pleasing. Because the other side, for one, the left side is really cramped and almost nothing there. And I don't mean nothing there because of how small it is. I just mean it's two buildings, or a building with two like windmills, which I guess is all right, but there's nothing else going on with those things except the blue coins, which fuck those things.
Yeah.
Just
So I also want to talk about like the levels. They're not really, they don't scale right in terms of difficulty. Like, when I was going through them, it didn't feel like, okay, this level's harder than this one's harder than this one. It was just kind of, they all felt like they were on the same level in terms of difficulty.
Yeah, I was a kid and I basically had no trouble with any of them. And as exemplified by my shadiness of being able to play games as it is now, that should say something. Not that the game has to be incredibly difficult, but yeah, the fact that it basically never really changed all that much. There was occasional hard stages within a level, but the level as a whole wasn't necessarily any harder.
Yeah.
So you'd have...
Or interesting.
Well, for instance, you go to the one where you're up in the sky, the village one on top of the big-ass giant sprite in the middle of the hub.
Yeah.
You go there, and I think it's either the first level, or it's one of those levels, but you basically don't have the flood, but everything's covered in goop, and it's fire goop, too. See, that was difficult, and I actually thought that was actually kind of an interesting level, because you were babied almost at that point. Like, once you compare what it's like with the flood to what it's like without the flood, if you feel like, wow, I was really babied, and now I have to, like, actually grow up and use, old Mario skills. I kind of like that level or that stage, to be honest, because there wasn't any time limit or anything. You had to figure out your path to get there.
That was also a great example of changing the level up, like I said, like covering a level in snow or fire at this point.
Yeah, exactly. It utilized the same level, but it completely changed how you play it. And it's not even like you had an area cut off to you or anything. No, you had almost everything at your disposal. And theoretically, as far as like what you could traverse with what you had, whatever you could do is what you could do. That was the stupidest sentence I've ever said. But anyway, the point is, there's difficult stages of each level. Maybe not each level, but yeah, as a whole, and then on that same level, you have, what was the really easy one? Oh, the red coins. I mean, it was just ridiculously easy if you thought to do what you're supposed to, which is basically look in the grass and all that stuff. But I mean, as far as difficulty, I mean, you didn't have to do any platforming. You had to go up the tree. That was it. But other than that, everything was pretty low, and so it was a really baby level at that point. So kind of like the hard stages, are neutralized by the really, really easy stages in a level, and so they all kind of feel the same, even though it doesn't work like on that kind of scale. But still.
And this takes me to what I want to talk about next, and what ends up being the big flaw, even though some people say you can kind of ignore it, is the blue coins. And, you know, yeah, you could ignore the blue coins, you could beat the game without them. But because the blue coins exist, that is what, 24 shines that you get through those? Or whatever. Those shines could be better put to making more levels.
Mm-hmm.
Like, those shines could have easily been like 2 or 3 levels. And that game needed those levels. So because they exist, they end up hurting the game as a whole.
Yeah.
Because of it.
Yeah.
And that really sucks.
Well, like what you and I were talking about, not in this video, for anyone that's trying to listen, but, you know, they could have benefited from at least putting a couple more levels in and spreading those, however many shines you get from the blue coins. For one, do away with buying the shines. Just have the blue coins as definitely. A collectible. To take those shines that you had, so keep the 120, maybe more if they really felt it was necessary to put more, but at least the 120, and spread the extra 20 out on 2 more stages at least, because I think it's what, 8 per stage, so that's 16 shines, and then you can have 2 secret shines per level if you wanted to divide it evenly. But instead they didn't. They shoved 20-something shines onto you by just bombarding every level with these shitty, stupid blue coins that are hidden in the most unintuitive areas.
I think the blue coins would have been better for maybe, like, unlocking secret game features, like maybe the flood has unlimited water. Maybe you could change Mario's clothes, maybe you could
I could see
buy
that.
lives or something. I don't know. It could have just been done in such a better way, and instead
of literally being currency.
Yeah. And that sucks. And I really wish this game had more levels. Because that is a really big part of
just in case if anyone isn't
off.
Gathering that from what we're saying.
Because I like this game. I think it's fun. But the stages that they give you are not enough, and some of them are really lame.
Yeah. It's hard for me to talk bad about this game because I played it all the time when I was a kid. And, well, however young. I mean, I'm 22 now, so I guess whatever age I was when it came out, if you consider that a kid. But I played it all the time, and I recognize some of this stuff. Not anything like mechanics or anything like that, but like some of the like gripes we had, like the blue coins. I was always like, wow, this is really annoying. These things, because I had a guide, so I tried to look for all of them. But it's just such a shitty thing that, like, the way they implemented it, as opposed to, I don't know, like I said, I didn't play Mario 64, so I don't really know how they used the blue coins in there aside from being collectible.
They were just 5 coins.
Oh, that's all they were. So you can get them multiple times, or what?
You would just get them, they would fill like 5 pieces of health, or you could get them and they count for 5 coins, so they were useful for collecting the 100 coin stars.
Oh, okay, alright. Yeah.
So, the one thing I really think they did excellently was the secret levels. Those were done really well.
Yeah.
That's one of the few things in level design that they really nailed, and I think it could have been a little bit of inspiration for Mario Galaxy for how they did those stages. I think that might have carried over there. The idea of like these little segments of hard platforming, kind of like just floating blocks pretty much in space.
Yeah.
And yet it was really fun to play it. So I think they found that out and they were like, hey, we could just make a game that was just this.
Yeah, I agree. Because obviously I didn't do very well in those levels, so they were difficult. I just felt that some aspects, like very small little bits in a couple of the secret levels, were a little bit wonky.
Okay, the Chuckster one is completely
we're ignoring that one completely.
Yeah.
Because that was the worst, probably level ever.
Yeah.
But, I meant just some of the physics of like the moving, like, for instance, okay, actually I don't remember what stage it's at, but there's a little tube that, fuck it,
Okay.
It rolls
Yeah, the one that goes
backwards.
back and forth.
No,
right?
no, it rolls backwards as it moves forward. So it rolls towards the screen while it moves away from the screen, technically. I mean,
Yeah.
and you have to walk over it, but it has like these square little, it's like a cog thing.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That one
I
was
know
a
what you're
little
talking
bit weird because
about. You could just slip and fly right off of it.
if you went over the edge just a tad bit early, all you would do, you just slip and fall and shoot right off. There's nothing you could do.
Yeah.
And other than that, I mean, not that one, but there's a couple things like that in some of the other ones. Other than that, I mean, they were, they were really, really good platformers. It's just a few of them felt, I don't know, I guess I'm just nitpicking at that point, because I guess it's kind of negligible, considering that they're a lot better than some of the other levels.
To me, it really highlights Mario's strengths and how well he was made. Like, I don't think, oh, it took away the flood, so it's better now. No, I'm saying, like, it really shows how well Mario maneuvers, and I think the reason why it does that is because Mario was probably designed in those type of environments, like empty space with just blocks. That's probably where they did testing on him. So of course he's going to work best in those environments.
Makes sense.
So the only thing really left here to talk about is like the story, but who gives a shit? The only thing I find creepy is the whole Peach being the mother of Baby Bowser. That's just strange.
Yeah.
Really fucking weird.
Yeah.
But who really cares? I mean,
Speaking
could
of
just
that,
have
I
no
just want to
story.
make a little note. I saw a girl at my work the other day with ears, like fox ears, and a tail, walking around as a customer. You just reminded me of it because he says I was assuming that we were saying it was weird because Bowser must have banged Peach, and it reminded
so you
me
saw a
of-
furry today?
basically.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know. But yeah,
Well,
story
with that-
six balls. There's pretty much no redeeming quality. I don't think there's any redeeming qualities to the story. None of it. Like, I'm not even
I
talking
don't
about
think-
realism. I mean, I'm just coercion. Coercion. They're not coercing me. Cohesion and consistency. Because, like I said earlier with the whole Shine Sprite thing, why aren't these Piantas just chucking their Shine Sprites that they have in their pockets? You know,
Back into
using
the
them,
middle.
using them to light the whole town again. It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, if you want a Nintendo game that has like an even interesting story, like just play a Zelda game.
Yeah,
Like that's about the best you'll get.
pretty much.
Or you could play Metroid Prime. Even though that wasn't Nintendo, that was Retro Studios. So with that, I guess we can kind of conclude this whole thing. Overall, like this is just a Mario game with great controls that just has too many issues in terms of level design and some a little bit in game design, and that sucks. The bosses are pretty crappy, and you don't really get much variety with that. It really could have used like a lot more interesting bosses.
Yeah,
And, you know, the flood gimmick was really interesting, but it ended up being a missed opportunity and just not utilized enough to end up making it shine like it should have. And a really big gripe just for me specifically, probably a lot of people wouldn't give a shit, but you don't get anything for 100%ing this game, so there's not really any motivation at all to try to go and get all the crappy blue coins or anything. There's just no reason.
yeah.
And I think in the end, I think we just have to say that Nintendo needs to stick to the Mushroom Kingdom.